Hello everyone and welcome to our webcast, Tips and Free Tools for Solving Nearly Every Application Incompatibility. My name is Jason Gary and I'll be your MC today and one of your presenters. You're joining us here at ScriptLogic, who we are now part of Quest Software, and we also have with us Greg Lambert, who is now with Quest Software coming from another Quest acquisition, Changebase. So we're all under the Happy Quest umbrella. So if you're not familiar with Quest, we'll explain a little bit about the company and show you some of what we do. We also have Greg Shields with us. For those of you who are aware, he's one of our industry veterans and experts in the area, and he'll be sharing with you his perspective on using some Microsoft tools on testing for application incompatibility. A couple of housekeeping items. You can use your phone or you can use your computer speakers to dial into audio, so if you're having trouble with one, you can try the other. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the questions box in the GoToWebinar console, and we will get to all questions at the end of the presentation. So if you have anything, don't wait, put it in the questions box and we'll try to get to it at the end. We will be giving away a free iPad 3 to one lucky attendee, so make sure you stick around for the end of the presentation because you have to be here to win. And we have an added benefit. We have a free iPad cover that we'll be giving away with this that's Quest branded, so you can protect your brand new iPad 3. And we will be recording this webcast, so if you're not able to stay the whole time or if you'd like to share it with anybody else, we'll be sending that via email next week. So a little bit about Quest. The company was founded in 1987. We're a global provider that offers a broad and deep selection of products that targets a lot of the common IT challenges. And it's not just what the products can do that's helpful, it's the fact that they do so many things across so many platforms that different platform vendors just can't replicate. Our customers enjoy the simplicity of working with one vendor and focused enough to address the most acute IT management pains, and we're basically a one-stop shop for less chaos, more productivity, and big cost savings. You can see on the slide here that we've broken the business up into 6 main solution areas. So based on what you're most concerned with, we have solutions for database management, Windows servers, performance monitoring, identity access management, data protection. And then today our topic about application compatibility falls under workspace management. And we cover all the platforms you see on the slide here, physical, virtual, and cloud environments. So if there's an issue that you have or a challenge you're facing in IT, Quest probably has some software that can help you out. And for those of you who may not know what user workspace management is, kind of talk about it a little bit here because it's a pretty new term, but it's stuff that as IT admins that you've dealt with for a long time. Today's worker really isn't constrained to a desktop or even a platform. You know, it used to be everybody would come into an office and sign on to a physical machine. Well, now our workers are all over the world. We have virtual platforms, we have physical platforms, we have different devices where we've got people bringing iPads and iPhones and tablets into the business. And we've got to focus on the needs of the user versus the specific device. So the software that we bundle into this user workspace, solution is designed to give users what they need in terms of their own devices, their own personalized environments, etc. But lets you as an IT admin standardize environments, you can support users, you can provision and deliver those experiences to your users no matter what they're on or where they're at. And it covers all those layers like applications, data, peripherals, connectivity, platforms, etc. So when you're talking about the user workspace, you're talking about that environment that they're working in no matter where it is or what they're on. So that was a little bit of an introduction to user workspace management, and I just want to introduce our speakers. Greg Shields, Senior Partner, Principal Technologist with Concentrated Technology. You've probably seen him all over on TechNet Magazine, Redmond, Real-Time Publishers, seen him speak at Tech Mentor, Tech Ed, which is coming up in a couple of weeks in Orlando, and VMworld. And he's a Microsoft MVP and a VMware vExpert, so very well qualified in this area. And we also have joining us Greg Lambert from Quest, who was the co-founder of Changebase, now part of the Quest family, and basically has a lot of experience in packaging applications, deploying applications, testing them, etc. And that's what we'll be covering in the second part of the webcast. So Greg's definitely the perfect expert to talk to you about how Quest can help you test for application incompatibility. So Greg Shields, how are you doing today?
So does this mean if there's a whole segment on user workspace management that we have to actually begin caring about the users?
You know, it sucks because the users can be a big pain, but yeah, you kind of have to care about them.
It's like this new world of IT where suddenly we actually give a care about the users. So very, very strange things going on in this world.
It's just how the world's evolving, man. We got to keep up.
Let me ask you a question, Jason. Maybe I'll ask also to you, Greg. So we're here to talk about incompatibility. So, application compatibility. Let me ask you, what is the most incompatible situation you ever found yourself in?
Well, for me, it was the day that I woke up in class in college and realized I didn't want to be an aerospace engineer anymore and spend the rest of my life solving physics problems, and I really would rather work in a creative, industry with people. So I ended up switching my major to business, and now I'm in marketing.
Sweet. I did that too, actually, but I was in computer engineering. The walk to the business college was shorter.
Yeah, nice.
What about you, Greg? You got an incompatible experience?
I've always found myself incompatible with. It's interesting you say physics, and I did the same thing actually. I did theoretical physics in school for 4 years, and I found myself quite incompatible with the long hours and the lack of women in class. So I then did a psychology degree, which had more women and not less work actually as well.
It's funny we should talk about incompatible situations because, well, incompatible applications are a big problem that a lot of people have. Do you like that segue there? Dun, dun, dun. You're all here today to talk about incompatible applications. And I've got a little bit of news to report. You are absolutely not going to enjoy this at all. You're not going to enjoy the process of making applications compatible. You're not going to enjoy trying to troubleshoot to figure out why they're compatible. You're not going to really dig all of the deep inner steps, all of that deep figuring out that you've got to do to try to figure out how you make an incompatible application compatible. And well, the reason why is because this ain't easy. The last time I looked, actually, I've been doing some work with Configuration Manager, and Microsoft's online compatibility database, the last sync that I did had over 666,000 applications that are currently being at least monitored by Microsoft for their compatibility status. That's almost 700,000 apps, and these are just the ones that the world is aware of. Many of us in our environment today, well, we've got apps out there, but it's the ones that, well, that are maybe not the ones that Microsoft would be aware of that are kind of the hard ones. Now, admittedly, so I say that this isn't easy, but I'm exaggerating a bit because really most applications, I shouldn't say most, many applications run just fine atop Windows 7. And there's been enough years now. So the big change in a lot of the security model and the profile structures changes, those happened in the Vista days. So the time period between XP to Vista and Vista to 7 and now 7 to, almost 8 means that, well, many of the applications that we're working with today have had enough time to get themselves compliant. Those that haven't, well, those were either coded poorly, they leverage Windows XP artifacts or Windows XP calls that no longer exist. They leverage pieces of the security model that exist on Windows NP but actually don't exist anymore because Windows 7 is so much more secure. So a lot of these apps that we have, they're maybe not the COTS apps, the off-the-shelf applications, but they may be some of the ones that we have built in our own environment or that we've purchased. You know those apps where you're the only customer of that company and they just don't have the funding to upgrade it to Windows 7. So when you do have apps, the real process that you have to do, and what really happens with most individuals, is you have to take that app and essentially shim it into functionality. This shimming process essentially inserts this little layer between the application and the things that the resources it's attempting to talk to, and it makes the computer that the application is sitting on top of behave or appear to behave in ways that make the application happy. Some of these shims are just, they're literally just spoofs. You know what? I'm just going to report that I'm Windows XP instead of Windows 7 because some apps have a hard-coded requirement for Windows XP. Other ones do some redirection of file calls or registry calls. But at the end of the day, the process of making an application compatible, which involves this whole process of shimming, and arguably is probably easier than switching from physics to, well, I don't know, to business and marketing. All the things you have to do are completely different there. Now, I'll tell you that there are really two needs that you have. And of those two needs, there are two tools that exist in the Microsoft suite that can help you at least understand what your application loadout is, and then with that information, then perform some actions on it. Now, the two tools that are out there, the first one is the Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit. Ridiculously easy to use tool. Now, that said, the reports that it generates are only moderately useful. When you have a need to inventory the applications, also the drivers that exist on your network, the Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit can actually do a pretty reasonable job of searching around in your network to try to figure out where those applications lie. Now, one of the reasons why the map is both easy to use and yet its reports are only moderately useful is because one of the ways, or the major way that the map goes about identifying applications is via calls to WMI. So map's easy because you don't have an agent involved. It can, from wherever its installation is, go out and inventory the different applications on the different servers and desktops in your network and pull back a kind of a reasonable assumption of which applications exist out there. One of the problems, however, with the map, and specifically WMI, is that applications don't always register themselves appropriately in WMI. So the applications you have, which are the bad apps in the first place, which are probably the ones that were poorly coded, are also probably the applications that the map may not be able to find. So we have kind of a second need. All right? So I need inventory, but I also have to maybe get a better inventory and also fix whatever I can find. Now, as a separate download, this is completely different from the map. There is this other thing you can download from Microsoft called the Application Compatibility Toolkit. And I say that it is more difficult to use mainly because there's a multiple-step process that you have to go through in order to get its little agents installed on your network. So I told you that in the map way, I can use remote WMI calls to gather information off of those systems. Well, to get a better view of what's on those systems and what those applications are doing, I have to have an agent that's sitting on there running in the local system context so that it can do a much deeper interrogation of all the apps and drivers and things that exist. So it's more difficult because you have to create this agent package, and you have to distribute it using some mechanism, group policy, an application delivery tool, walking around with a DVD, PowerShell, PSExec, some sort of way that you can invoke an installation onto the computers in your environment. So the ACT, a little bit harder to use, involves agents, gives you reports, also gives you the ability to create and then insert these shims between your applications, and a little tiny bit of workflow in there too. Now, when I say workflow, you can think of this as kind of a mini help desk that's only really useful for you. You can create work orders associated with the applications that you have and then track the status of their compatibility, but it's really not a great, it's not a multi-user help desk by any stretch of the imagination. So switching back over to the map, the usual flow with Microsoft's technologies is that most people begin with the map, just simply because it's a simple tool. Using those remote WMI calls, it can collect a list of applications and install drivers on your network. And it focuses specifically on, are your machines really ready for Windows 7? So the machines in terms of the drivers, the machines in terms of the hardware, the applications in terms of their compatibility. Now, a lot of people start with the map first and then move on to the ACT, just simply because the map gives them that ability to identify things that are out there. The inventorying functions are an easier start. If you're a low complexity environment and you really don't want to go through the upfront effort to try to distribute out the agents, at least this gives you an initial kind of situational awareness of where your compatibility lies. So with that inside the map, and switch over to the next slide, please. Inside the map, one of the things that I really like about the map is, in addition to the usual ways that you would think it would identify all the machines in your network, it actually has some pretty interesting tools that go beyond the scope of the domain. As you can see here, there are multiple options that you can use for discovering the computers on your network. So Active Directory being one of them. Just searching through all the different IP addresses that are out there can be another one. Config Manager can be another one. You can enter in computer names. You can even import computer names from a file. And here's one of the things that I dig about this is when you identify these discovery methods, you can add multiple credentials as well. So I can list in order. For the type of technology I am using to query these machines remotely, well, try this credential. And if that doesn't work, try this one. If that doesn't work, try this one. If that doesn't work, try this one. And it can step through that list to ultimately bring you a report. And the report looks at it like this. So for a readiness report for Windows 7, this is a product inventory report that says for my computers, G Shields 1, Tricross, and Crosstrail, here are a number of the applications that I have on my network, which strangely involves a lot of Apple software. So that's what the map is. Now, okay, Greg, that's great. Having a report is wonderful, but what do I do with this stuff? Well, the notion is that once you have the list of software in your environment, the next step is to write those pieces of software down on a piece of paper, or to hit the print button, or to put an Excel spreadsheet or whatever, and then go look up that piece of software in the Windows 7 Compatibility Center. And online at Microsoft.com/Windows/compatibility is a list of all 666,000 applications and their application compatibility status. So you can, all right, so for Apple Bonjour, go scroll down and, okay, Apple Bonjour, you see where I'm going with this. So the map, again, kind of simple at the outset, but you kind of have to pay later on when you're manually going through this process of identifying, well, what software do I have and is it compatible or not? So if the map's simple, the Act is a little bit more challenging. It is a robust solution for charting applications against their Microsoft Clearinghouse rating for compatibility, which I believe I copied word for word off of Microsoft's website because I thought that was just humorous. With the Act, what the Act is doing is, in addition to throwing out those agents, what the Act does is collect the information, then cross-reference the information with what it finds up at Microsoft. And Microsoft has this whole kind of playground politics thing that they've set up where the information actually flows in both directions. So when you go and ask, hey, Microsoft, give me the compatibility status for these apps, in return for the info, you've got to give them your information about which applications you have. Actually, kind of neat. I kind of actually dig this process. I'll give you my info if you give me your info. So, as I said, the data collection leverages an agent. That local installation gets you a better view of the data, particularly for those bad applications, the ones that just do not do a very good job of registering themselves in the usual places inside of WMI. And I think I mentioned also that you have to actually deploy out these agents via some external solution. So the GPSI, logon scripts, whatever Quest product you have purchased to accomplish that task, configuration manager, whatever you have out there that can actually execute a setup.exe or setup.msi across the machines in your environment. So there's kind of three processes that happen with the Act. The first is just collecting data. And the data collection packages are these agents that it's essentially a software installation, and it's in a pre-silenced MSI format. If you're familiar at all with the process of packaging software, well, we've got to get it in a silenced format so that I can distribute it out, so it doesn't prompt the user for anything. These data collection packages will occur for a defined period of time. They'll measure statistics and application usage for a configurable period of time, and then report back their information to the, I'll call it the server, but it could be your desktop, on what kinds of applications it finds. Now, the packages take some time. You might create the package, and then you might send out the package, and it might take you a couple of days or a couple of weeks or even a month for those packages to do all the analysis that they need and report back that data in your Act, quote-unquote, server's process folder. When you start seeing that data, that's when you know your agents are beginning to report back. When that happens, you can take a look at Act's Analyze view and see what kind of applications that it has identified. Once it identifies the applications, you'll notice up there in the upper left-hand corner of the screen is this button marked Send and Receive. And reminds you of the old POP days and the old POP clients. But the Send and Receive notion here, what it does is take the stuff that you have, the applications you have, and it squirts all that information up to Microsoft. If you specifically set any, assessment ratings for that software, in fact, that's the third from the right column there in the screenshot you're seeing, those assessment ratings get uploaded as well. And then it sends down all the information that it has from the community about different applications and how successful they are with being compatible in Windows 7. Now you'll notice though, so the Act has been around for a very long period of time, and the community assessment for some of these applications is relatively light. I mean, the SQL Server browser has a rating of 4, and in the years that this tool has been around, only 3 people have actually assessed it. But what this is this is the information that various people in the out in the world have entered into their Act tool and uploaded up to Microsoft. Here's an example of the kind of the built-in, albeit very rudimentary, issue tracking system that the Act has. So for this particular piece of software, the Office Diagnostics Service, it actually conflicts with some of their app on Windows 7. So this work order ticket identifies what the problem is and allows you to identify a rating for, well, do we see this as being a big problem, and if so, why? The next time you hit the Send Receive button, well, then it's going to send that information up to Microsoft so that you can share it with the other people in the community. So, okay, all of this so far has only gotten us through the collect phase and the analyze phase. The actual fix phase is where things get somewhat more challenging. So there is this Compatibility Administrator tool that inside of the Act is the solution for testing and applying the fixes that you have. Built into the Compatibility Administrator are over 6,500 known incompatible applications and their fixes, which I'll just tell you, the applications that are actually in here are so old as to be almost humorous. Like Mavis Beacon teaches typing old, and no joke. But of those 6,500 known incompatible applications, I will guarantee you that none of these are the apps you're probably running today. So they're there, but they're kind of there really as kind of guidance to help you figure out, what sorts of solutions exist for what sorts of problems. Where the real meat comes is in the 360 some odd fixes or shims that you can tag to a specific application for fixing that problem. So there's a whole list of these shims in there. The shim may say, redirect file call, redirect registry call, pretend that you are Windows XP. Any of these shims that are out there. And so there are 360 of them that you can insert between the application and the operating system to identify, well, okay, this fix needs to be associated with this app, and so when it executes, run in this execution space. There's kind of a general workflow here. You typically do an inventory. You use that inventory to figure out what your bad apps are, cross-reference them with any known fixes or updates. There's going to be some Googling going on here to try to figure out if there are any known fixes. There is, if you've ever right-clicked on an executable in Windows and seen the tab and properties for compatibility mode, one of the kind of sledgehammer approaches for fixing quite a few applications can be just by simply setting the compatibility mode from Windows 7 back down to Windows XP. Now what this is doing under the covers is there are, out of the 360 fixes, there are a certain set of them, and I can't tell you how many there are, that are tagged or associated with the Windows XP compatibility mode. If that doesn't work, well, then you've got to go through this sort of guess and check process based off of the behaviors that you're seeing in the application. Now, if you thought you were going to come to this webinar and get an immediate, instant, by the way, we're just going to figure out everything for you and apply these fixes automatically, not with the Microsoft tools are you going to be able to do that. You've got to go through each of the fixes and try to figure out which ones make sense and implement just the ones that are specifically appropriate for your needs. Once you've done that, once you've gotten the the list of fixes down to exactly the ones that fix that application, well, you add those working fixes to a fixed database that you then distribute out to the different Windows machines in your environment. Here's a picture of one application, the HP WebJet Admin application, which, okay, I lied. Some of us are probably still using WebJet Admin, this version. And so for this WebJet Admin tool, well, here are the fixes down here. Vista RTM version lie. You know what? Just pretend that you're Vista. Here are the matching files that tell that fix, okay, when this product name attempts to execute, well, then go ahead and apply the fix. So these are the shimmed apps. There are also the fixes. And here's a picture of what those fixes look like. I've got a list of, I don't know, about a dozen here on the screen. When you set a compatibility mode, these individual fixes are what get ticked on or ticked off for that compatibility mode. And then you can go, kind of as the next step, into this compatibility fixes screen and start checking them off and clicking the test run button to see what works. So admittedly, this is a bit of a kind of a guess and check process. You kind of have to figure out, well, what sorts of behaviors aren't working with my application, and then based off of those behaviors, well, then what do I need to do? Once you're through, once you've got everything ready to go, there is a compatibility fix database in an SDB format that you essentially take all the fixes and merge them into that database, distribute that database out to the machines in your environment, typically through a logon script using Config Manager, GPSI, whatever Quest tool you may have purchased, also a task sequence if you're using MDT. But the sdbint.exe is a native tool built into Windows 7 that will allow you to actually ingest this myfixes, or whatever you call your database, this fixed database onto each local machine in your environment. So the Easter egg that I have is, thanks, Greg, you've now told me how awful my life is going to be in trying to get these applications working. Which fix do I actually apply? Thankfully, Microsoft has listed, well, you can review the URL here, but Microsoft has listed for all the 360 fixes what the symptom is, kind of, what the fix is, and the name of the fix, and then the description of kind of what that fix is attempting to do. So, like I said, with all of these script logic and Quest solutions, I'm here to tell you how to do things the hard way. I'm guessing, Greg, that you're now here to tell people how to do things the easy way.
Absolutely, Greg. It's interesting. I think when you go through some of this, and this is Greg Lambert speaking, and of course it's all the added benefits of having two Gregs on the session here. You know what's really interesting? You mentioned about data going up as well, and one of the things I found in my experience of working with tools like this is that there's a lot of organizations that have security policy that, you know, if you even mention the version of that application they're running, that's a security concern. It highlights that particular, any vulnerabilities in that particular app. But also, you know, one of the things that we sort of miss when we look at these type of things is the internal apps, or the what I call the line of business apps, things that nobody would ever know or care about, right? Like your company's timesheet application. So it's interesting, you know, like I say, you've gone through some of the issues there. There's a couple things where these tools really don't apply, and then of course the fixing process, you're going to have to be an expert with some time and some resources to be able to address these issues. Do you agree with that, Greg?
Or tenacity.
A paid by the minute or something, right?
Exactly.
You tried that day.
with 360, how many combinations of up to 360 possible fixes are there times however many apps you've got to work on? That's a very large number. But with the Microsoft tools, they're there. They work, but you're going to have to put the investment in.
That's right. In fact, one of the things we've really seen, the Microsoft tools, I think, are more of a focus for developers. You can take one app, have a look at the results, and then try some fixes. And if you're a developer and you know what it's trying to do, and you look at the issues and you're aware of the symptoms, that kind of app by app process may be helpful. But I think a lot of the challenges we're seeing really is what I would call a question or the challenge of scale. Okay, so I've got an app, but I've got 4,000 other apps that have similar issues, right? And that's
I can't tell you when the last time I had to deal with the get system firmware table function was. I don't even know what that function is.
or some of the deprecated Office APIs that have names like, there was another generic one called like Go Print or something like that. Like, yeah. How would you know? How would you know, right? So yeah. Okay. So hey, hopefully everyone can hear me. All right. Should we talk about some change-based stuff? Should we do a little bit of let's say there's some automated assessment and remediation?
Tell them how to make it easy.
Yeah, let's do that.
So Greg, before we get started on the change-based stuff, why don't we talk about inventorying and discovering applications first?
That's a great idea. I think that's a good phase of a good next step for this whole process.
Yeah, I mean, this graphic I just threw up on the slide here, this marketing brain trust we have here at Quest, spend a lot of time coming up with this to really clearly try to define, what are the steps that you really should be going through when you're testing what we'll call application readiness. Are your applications ready to be on your environment, whether it's a new version of application or a patch, or even if you're migrating to something like Windows 7 or in the future even Windows 8. These are the main steps that we feel that you should follow. And you can kind of see how we've built in the products, overlaid them to those different steps. So you see the Asset Manager starts by helping you discover and identify the applications in your environment, which if you do have 4,000 applications in your environment, do you really need to migrate or test all of them, or are a certain number of them now obsolete? Are people no longer using them, etc.? So you don't want to go through the work of migrating or testing all those applications if they're not being used anymore. So you can do that, and then the next step after that is to figure out, what are the right apps to migrate and test. So you've got to plan and rationalize that whole process, and that, goes back to talking to users and business owners and saying, do you use this application? Do you need it? What are the requirements for that, so that you can really make the best use of your time and not find out you spent all this time testing the application that one person uses and it's not even really that important to them. And that's where Changebase will take over, and it's going to assess the compatibility. Some of what Greg Shields was talking about applies in terms of, testing the compatibility, but Changebase, as Greg Lambert will show you, does that very quickly and easily. And in many cases, it can actually fix those compatibility issues for you automatically and then package that application with the fixes so that you can deploy that in your environment. And I know Greg will cover this later, but not only can you package them for your physical environment, but if you have a virtual environment or virtual desktops, you have a mix in your environment, you can also package those apps for virtual deployment. And that's also useful if you can't make them compatible on the latest version of Windows, then maybe you can deploy them virtually in an older version, but you can still have everybody running the latest version. And then it kind of starts all over again because you have to keep managing those apps. As you're going through, you may not have a migration every year, but you have to make sure that those apps continually work in your environment as new versions and patches come out. So that's kind of what we call the application readiness lifecycle. So the first product I want to talk to you about is Asset Manager, and it kind of takes the functionality of the map tool and helps you inventory and identify all the applications on your network. And the version that we have specifically that works with Changebase is called Asset Manager Discovery Edition. And it's really all about discovering apps on the network, recognizing exactly what they are, not just is this Acrobat Reader or Microsoft Word, but is this Microsoft Word as a part of Office Professional or Office Enterprise, or is this Acrobat on its own, or is it part of the Creative Suite, etc. Whereas a lot of inventory tools may just say, hey, you have this application. It may not tell you it belongs to this suite of products or how it's licensed, and that, of course, becomes very important when you're trying to reconcile your software. It also helps meter that software, and there's two different kinds of metering. There's passive and active. Passive metering is really just recording what's going on, who's running the applications, what applications are installed and being used, which ones aren't, which again will help you with your planning and rationalizing, so you can really quickly see, there's a subset of applications no one's using, and that makes that rationalization a lot easier. And you typically want to start with this before moving into Changebase, because again, you don't want to have to migrate all 4,000 applications if you don't need to. So Normally I would show you the product, but we're in the final stages of releasing version 9 of Asset Manager, and so I don't have a working demo version available, so I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots. And there's some great upgrades to this new version, the biggest of which is a new user interface that makes it a lot easier to use the software and get around. It's a web-based console, so you don't have to install any local clients. But we do deploy agents out to your client machines, and that's what does the data collection, and it also enforces metering. So if you put in active metering and you want to limit people, concurrent users based on licensing agreements, you can do that, and that agent helps enforce that. But what it's also going to do is start collecting data for you. It may be a little hard to see in the screenshot, but this middle graph here is showing you used and unused software. And it's doing that by checking how many places this certain software is installed and how many times users are launching it within a certain period of time. Up to 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and you can very quickly see as you collect data where the software falls out. You can also have different reports pulled up, by manufacturer, by license type, etc., and you can have alerts sent to you if there's issues with your licensing. So it makes it very easy to discover and gather data on that software before you actually go through the compatibility testing. And you can see on the left there that we do a lot of information that digs into software license management. We also contract IT contract licenses and agreements, hardware assets. So there's a lot more than what we're just doing here in terms of app compatibility, but very important and very useful in that beginning stages of testing and migrating applications. So what do we recommend that you do? I mean, I've already said it, and I'll say it again. You really want to discover and identify your applications before you get started. You're going to want to meter that usage, and maybe not active metering, but at least passively meter that so you can gather data on the usage of those applications. And before you start running through, the test cases and using Changebase to test all 4,000 applications, you really want to plan out and rationalize what apps you can retire. Are they just outdated? Are they on old platforms? Is it going to be, too much work to migrate and test them and deploy them in the new environment? Is anyone using them, etc.? So you want to take those steps before you get to Changebase. So here's another screenshot of Asset Manager where you're digging into the software and looking at different families of software. So you may have multiple versions of Microsoft products on your environment, and is Visio part of the Office or is it a separate license? And you've got to kind of figure out how all that ties together so that you can make sure you're testing the right applications. You can see how many computers the software is installed on, how many users are using it, do we need a license for that, etc. And then we can get all of that inventory and usage data from all of our computers. And like I mentioned already, we're going to identify those software packages. Some of the recognition challenges that we have with other solutions or native tools is, we're looking at file header information, add remove program data. We're trying to recognize those sweeps. We're trying to figure out the type and the category of the software, and these are all things that you can do quite easily with Asset Manager. So here's another view from Asset Manager 9 that's coming out. More detailed view about a specific suite of software, Microsoft Enterprise 2007. Our DNA database pulls in a lot of this information based on what we know about the software. We can bring in the standard prices for the licenses. Your company may negotiate different prices, but let's say we have a standard price of $429 per license for Office Enterprise 2007. Well, if you've got this installed on 100 machines and you find out 25 people are not even launching Office for at least 30, 60, 90 days, now you're realizing that, okay, 25 times $430, that's money that you've wasted on licenses that people aren't using. And you just multiply that times the applications that you have in your environment and the users who aren't using them, and you very quickly can identify budget that you can go and redirect to other products or other projects. So when you're planning and rationalizing, it boils down to what are you going to migrate and what are you going to retire? Is anyone using them? Are there newer versions we can upgrade to before we migrate? Is there another product that performs a similar function, or do we have multiple software on the environment that performs similar functions? And is it critical to the business? We have a couple of quotes here on the slide. Microsoft has come on record and said that you can eliminate up to 90% or more of your applications you inventory because they're duplicate, they're hardware-based, or you just don't need them. So you look at this project of migrating to a new operating system or something like that, or trying to deploy a virtualized infrastructure, and you look at this big picture of applications, that may not be really what you need to focus on. So you want to take a look at that. Really easy reporting in Asset Manager, and you can pin these reports to the dashboard. You can schedule them to be sent. You can export them, all of that fun stuff. But there's about 20 pre-canned reports, or actually I think there's quite a bit more than that. I think 120 pre-canned reports that you can customize based on the information you want to see. And this one's showing you basically a couple of software suites, how many computers and users is the software installed on, how many licenses did we purchase, and what pool do we have to work with. So if we really wanted to make sure we're adhering to our license agreement, we can purchase a license for, let's say, 4 concurrent users, and as soon as that 5th concurrent user tries to start up the software, we can actively stop them from doing that so we can stay in compliance. And we can actually track how many times that happens, so we can say, hey, maybe we need to buy some more licenses of this software so that we have enough available for that pool of users. So now, I've pretty much covered the inventory, and I think I've nailed it into everyone's head how important it is to really figure out what applications to migrate. And Greg, I know you're going to get into the compatibility testing, but what do you think about this whole idea of really planning, rationalizing, and discovering before you even get to this phase?
I guess what's Greg there? Hey, you know what? This is such a key part of the whole migration phases. I think it's absolutely essential that you go and take a look at what you've got, get the right numbers, and one of the things we see is we go out and we find these organizations that need to migrate, and they go, oh, we've got 8,000 apps, and after a little bit of work, you can get that down to 5,000 or 3,000 apps, and it's really finding what's right for the organization, and I think a tool like this is absolutely essential for actually starting the whole plan, really. And I think one of the biggest challenges we're finding for a lot of organizations as you start the Windows 7 migration processes is just simply where do you start, right? It's a big thing, and this is a great place to start your migration planning and your whole rationalization, compatibility assessment, and remediation process. Okay, so is it my turn? Do I get to chat about App Compat now? Is everybody okay with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'll jump in. Okay. Well, with all this, this is the Script Logic Asset Manager tools are really a great starting point, a great feed into the App Compat question. So you're really trying to find out what challenges are out there. But one of the things we found is that just apps. You have your apps, but your environment is changing all the time, and there's a number of sort of feeds into that right now. You got your existing apps, your app updates. You're seeing Patch Tuesday changes, right? So you got this very dynamic, changing environment. And then I think one of the things we have to really focus on is taking the idea that we're working with a dynamic platform, right? Things are always changing, things are always updating. So I just want to highlight that with this particular slide there, just all the different sort of feeds into what may cause or be a part of your application readiness, your plan there. So just the next slide then, if you could. And I think one of the things I sort of highlighted here with this particular slide is that, we're seeing these, big OS changes that are happening every few years, and we're going to, I think, see the latest update of Windows 8 tomorrow, I think, that if I got my dates right. So, or it might have even been today. We'll see what happens with Redmond right now. But you get these big changes, but also you get your application updates, and we're seeing roughly a third attrition rates. So 33% attrition rates for most organizations. So every year you're changing roughly a third of your portfolio. And then, of course, you get the other updates as well. So the net result of all this is this quite frequent change process. And again, that whole idea of things are changing. But one of the things that's been different over the previous environments, previous sort of situations where we migrate, is just when you guys are migrating now, when we're all migrating, we're actually changing as we're moving. And then we're moving on to a changing platform. So I just want to put that a little bit of idea there, and I'll show you what this comes back to that in a little bit. So if we head to the next slide. As we see, one of the things that comes up now is It's not just apps. It's not just your operating system. It's also your browsers, right, and new devices and new environments. So it's not just change of existing environments. It's new environments that are changing, new levels, new questions to ask. And I think one of the issues with, as we were developing ChangeBase, I said, okay, we'll get the apps right and that'll be fine, right? Then people started asking us, well, hey, what about virtualization? Okay, we'll help with that. Hey, what about browsers? Okay, we'll help with that. And we found that it wasn't just change, it was different types of change in the environment as well. So and we're going to see that. There's going to be new things we've never seen before, and they'll be changing my expectations. They'll be changing more frequently as well. So all that, so a little bit about ChangeBase. We've been around for about 4 years now, just over 4 years now. The whole focus for us was to create a platform where we could load your applications, assess them for compatibility for your 64-bit Windows 7, your virtualization technologies, and for browsers, and then automatically fix them. We want to create a simple way of identifying the issues and a simple way of automatically fixing those issues. We were acquired just last year, October. In fact, 9 o'clock on the 21st of October, and so far it's been working really well. And you can see there's some natural fit with the change-based technology into the Quest overall technology group. You can see how Asset Manager fits really well in there, and then the change-based tools, and of course you can only imagine that the roadmap for us is to integrate those technologies closer in the future. We just hit the next slide there. So I guess one of the things I wanted to talk about was the whole idea of automating, and it really comes back to what Greg Schiff was mentioning earlier on about this one app, and we were talking about that a little bit with the ACT toolset and map, was this one-on-one sort of issue. And one of the things we see with automation is, one, it's really addressing that scale issue. Thousands of apps, hundreds of apps. So we need to crash the time and therefore increase the speed at which we're moving through the app compat analysis or mediation process. But there's a second piece that we need to do. We need to get this right. This is important. Things people rely on it for the business. We need to get this job done well. So we need to add a quality aspect to all this. And of course, one of the benefits you get with automation is consistent approach. We're not all experts in app compat. I've been doing packaging and app work for 10, 12 years now. Not everybody else has, right? So not everybody else has the best day. And one of the things you can do with automation is say, once you get it right, you can continue to get it right. So the idea is that we're going to crash the speed for the assessment. We're going to automate the assessment and remediation process. We're going to have a great, high-quality outcome, and it's going to be consistent. I think one of the key bits you really want to look at with the change-based option. And of course, one of the things we're doing here, it's not just about cost. It's not just about resource. Yes, those are going to be reduced. We're going to make those tremendous improvements through automation. We're going to reduce the risk to the project. Instead of 6 months, it's a few days. Buy yourself some time. Buy change-based. I mean, that's the whole idea here. We're going to collapse the time, increase the quality, consistent results. We're going to decrease that risk for that project. We just jump to the next slide there. Good. So I guess if you just look at the process here, so you're going to identify your apps. Of course, you can take a look at get your collation of apps with the TopLogic Asset Manager Toolkit. Loading application packages, simple drag and drop process in bulk, 100,000. In fact, we've had some clients with over 10,000. In fact, one client with 16,000 apps. The same process. Drag a root folder onto ChangeBase, press the load button, you leave. And I'll show you how that works later on in a demo. Now, the assessment, we're going to talk about the Windows 7 64-bit, the virtualization technologies, including SBS and FinApp. There's a server compatibility assessment there. I think one of the key bits is we're going to automate the fixing. We're going to tell you what the problem is, and we're going to fix it. We're going to deploy that app right to UAT. Our customers do that. This is a real-life, in-production tool that's been used, hundreds of thousands of apps. It works. It's real. It's been certified by Accenture, Microsoft. The fixes we're doing, and I'll show you how it works, are in production right now with live and completed Windows 7 migrations. The final piece of this puzzle, of course, is getting things into the right virtualization format. And that's when you need to automatically virtualize your applications. And so what we could do is once we fix the apps and made them compatible for the target platform, we can then virtualize them in the target virtualization flavor or format for it. Okay, so if we go to the next slide there.
No, I think we're good on slides. I think we're going to switch over to the demo. Does that work?
Absolutely, yeah. Let's do that.
Okay, so we're getting pretty close to the top of the hour, everyone. So right around 3 o'clock, we'll take a pause. We'll do the drawing for the iPad winner to make sure that everyone's here to see the winner, and then we'll answer questions once the demo's done. So if you can't stick on, we'll make sure that we forward your questions on, and we'll try to reach out to you and answer any questions that you have. Go ahead, Greg.
Okay, okay, great. So you know what I can do? What I'll try to do is, we've got a few moments here. I'll give you a bit of a high-level view of the change-based product, how it works, how things look, show you some sample reports, so that show you how we look at the world, so this application compatibility world. I'll load an app into the system. We're going to run some reports and do some honest fixes. Now, I'm going to try to do all this in about 4 or 5 minutes. So let's see how this goes, okay? So hopefully everyone can see that, we've got the change-based workbench product up there. It's a very simple view of the world. We've got 3 buttons, and as you can see on the top left there, I got load it, run it, and fix it. This software is designed so that the basic process is very simple. Load your apps in, run your reports, do your fixes. A lot of switches and dials in the background if you want it. Complexity is there if you want it. But the goal is the basic usage, very simple. Just 3 things. Load it, run it, fix it. And as you see here, I've already loaded some applications into ChangeBase. And I've actually got some red, amber, green results in the applications here. You can see an Acrobat full version here. And one of the things we did, we looked at some of the results of tools like Snap and Act from Microsoft and go, gosh, that's an awful lot of information. How do we make sense of all that? And because we're generating similar amounts of data, right, like thousands of endpoints of data. So what we did was try to say, okay, if it's fixable, it's amber. If it's unfixable, it's red. And if there's no issues, it's green. So we've got a very simple view of the world here, red, amber, green. Generally, for most application portfolios, red represents 5% of your applications. Right? If you're going to go to a 64-bit platform, that might be 6 or 7% in total. So what we're really saying is that the vast majority of your applications will be fixable and deployable to Windows 7. And so what you get here with these applications is you can say, look, we've got some bit of issues with this app, and you can drill down between this particular app already loaded into ChangeBase. There's decom issues, and you say, what's a real detailed issue? But look, there's a particular component of this particular app that will never work under app B, right? It's a red. But we've got some other fixable issues. But this is probably not a good candidate for virtualization under app B. So you get these very simple results here. There's some other apps that you can see like that. But you can also export all these results in a more bulk format into a summary, profile. I'm not sure how this works. Or more detailed results. And I've done that already here. So what we can do is we can go, here's the summary results here. And you can look, this is great here. You can see on the Windows 7, all the issues that are fixable. And you can say, okay, these are my issues, with number green on the left, and look, most of the issues are fixable, which is great news. And okay, you can go to the next tab here, and you can see that this application here, we can generate a profile report, which is my favorite. As you can see the applications listed under here on the left, and then on the right, you can see the impact of these particular technologies, right? So you can actually have some, what I would call, steering information about this particular application. You go, right, is it good for a native, a 64-bit, or what virtualization technology would be best for this app? That's a big help there. And if you want the data, if you want the results, you want the deep down details, it's all there. The data is yours, it's your apps. You should be able to report upon everything, and we give you all the results that are available there. So just a few samples there. That was a summary. And that was the, 1 second, profile, and that's the data there. So going back to the ChangeBase app, we've got a number of questions we could ask. We could ask Windows 7, 64-bit, and V issues. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually walk you through the process. We've just got a couple minutes left here, so I'm going to load an application into ChangeBase. We're going to run some Windows 7 only reports, and then we're going to actually look at those, and then we're going to fix them. I'll show you how that works. So I'm just going to clear the results here. Just take a second to do like that, and then what I'm going to do is just drag this particular MSI application onto the workbench. There it is there. Notice the loader button is now enabled. And what we're going to do, we're taking that information, we're taking into configuration information, the binary information, all that, and we're loading into ChangeBase for later analysis, right? So what we're really saying is, like, we get all the information we can. We're not asking any questions yet. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to deselect the 64-bit for a second, deselect the app Z, and I'm going to run the Windows 7 checks on my app. Here we go. So I've selected my app, selected my types of questions, and I'm going to press the Run It button. So I've now loaded the application into the database. I'm now ready to ask some great questions, right? So, compatibility issues such as configuration, security restrictions, driver issues, installation logic, legacy control panel configuration issues, all those types of questions that may prevent an application from installing, configuring, running, updating, or uninstalling correctly. We'll be able to ask. And in fact, we're asking thousands of individual questions about that particular application. As you see, we're just doing a little bit of analysis here. It's progressing through, and you can get a bit of an idea of the types of questions we're asking right here. And you can select or deselect. So you might say, actually, I don't care about the Active Directory settings, but so you can uncheck that. And so what that means, you have real complete control over what questions are asked, how they're expressed, and really what results you get back from that. So I'm just running the last report there for this particular application. It's just finishing up now. And so here's our app. We've just run the Windows 7 reports. And I've got a number of issues. And I've got installation issues, control panel security issues, help file documentation issues. Looks like some sort of installation issues as well. Now, what I could do is say, okay, I want to have a look at that. Yes, looks very interesting. If I was an expert on how to fix compatibility issues, I could fix that manually. About half an hour or so to update the application. Not too bad. This one here, okay, yeah, I see that. Yeah, that won't work in the Windows 7. If I was another expert, I would update the package. Another half an hour. You start adding this all up, and they go, actually, to fix this particular application for all the Windows 7 issues would probably take me about between 4 and 6 hours to run and configure and test. What I'm going to do now is actually just select all those Windows 7 issues. And what I'm going to do is just press the Fix It button. Notice the Fix It button is now enabled. I've selected the issues, got these 6 issues with this application we just loaded, ran the Windows 7 reports, and I'm just going to press the Fix It button. So the first thing we do is make a backup of that particular package in that directory. And we are starting to add some fixes. So we'll change the package. We're going to update it. We're going to create an MST. And this is what's interesting. We reload it back into change phase. And we take all the changes and we double check them. So we're going to rerun the reports and do all the scans. What we've just done that quickly, about 15, 20 seconds here, we've loaded this application into change phase. We ran the reports. We came up with another number of issues. And we've automatically fixed them by pressing the Fix It button. This app is now compatible with Windows 7, and it's ready to deploy to a UAT environment. One of the questions that we used to get asked quite a bit is like, that's a bit of a black box, bit of magic, what's going on here? So one of the things we did is actually say, well, let's have a look at the history of this application. Because everything we do now has to be visible, right? So here we go, it was imported by me. Here's the fixes. Every change that's made is reversible. So you can actually change all the package. You can go back each level, and everything is documented. When's the last time you had a fully documented change control process for your application? So great stuff. This app is now ready. And so what we just covered there, I just showed you the sort of basic UI of the ChangeBase Workbench product. You can load it, run it, fix it buttons on the top there. Your reports on the top, your application's already loaded in. We just ran through a quick load of an application, dragged from the desktop. We ran the Windows 7 report, generated 6 Lambert issues, and just quickly selecting those issues, press the Fix It button, and automatically updated that application and reloaded with a double check to make sure everything we did. So this app is now ready to go.
So, Greg, that sounds like a heck of a lot less time than it would take using ACT and MAP to try to figure that out and make that all happen.
Absolutely, and what you're actually doing is getting the benefits of hundreds of thousands of applications and all the people doing the work on that. So we don't share the application version information or anything like that, but what we do share is the classes of problems that may cause an application to fail and install, run, config, or update. So what you're actually getting is the benefit of all the organizations who have done this before, and effectively you've got yourself a automated application compatibility expert as well.
Great.
Hopefully that made
Well, that was a quick demo, probably the quickest demo I've ever seen. So if the software is that fast, then you should be able to see some value pretty quickly.